Welcome to the Growth Matters podcast. I am your host, Justice. We deal with different elements such as faith, families, and finances. Today's episode is dealing with the Lenten season. Lenten season, what is Lent? Lent has 6 weeks preceding Easter. For many Christians, this is a worldwide event. A Lenten season is the most critical event, a time of the year. Lent begins on this year, March 5th, on Wednesday, Ash Wednesday. And while Advent is a joyful time and anticipation, but Lent is commonly a solemn time. Yes, a solemn observance. The Lenten season prepares us for the Easter celebration to remember and commemorate the life, death, and resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It's an excellent time to reflect and consider what it means to be a Christian. Today we have as our host, as our guest, Reverend Dr. Lawrence J. He's the Executive Director of the Rolling Ridge Retreat Center and Conference Center in North Andover. Welcome to the Growth Matters podcast.
Great. Glad to be here, Justice.
Yeah. Could you just share a little bit about yourself with our listening audience before we get started with the conversation?
No problem. And so I know that my official title is the Reverend Dr. Lawrence.
Yes, that's right.
But we're friends, so you can call me Larry.
Okay.
But I've been out here in Massachusetts at Rolling Ridge for about 8 years now.
All right.
And so prior to that, I was actually over in California, where I'm born and raised. I was serving as the Director of Guest Services at a camp and conference center in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And prior to that, I was a pastor in San Francisco. Oh. And I'm actually an ordained American Baptist pastor who graduated from a Franciscan seminary, who is now working at a United Methodist Conference Center. So I wear many hats in terms of the Christian tradition. And so it allows me to be able to kind of lean into all the various opportunities of Christian spiritual formation that have formed me to be able to bring it to our center at Rolling Ridge.
Wow, yeah, that's real rich background in history. Could you tell us a little bit how Rolling Ridge was established
and so Rolling Ridge so we actually began in 1948. We're actually a historic mansion on the shores of Lake Kachikowit in North Andover. And so it originally began as a summer home for a rich wool merchant from New York named Ethan Allen. And we always say, not that Ethan Allen, not the Vermont Ethan Allen, but just a normal Ethan Allen who was in New York looking for a place to build for his family in the North Andover area. And so the property was established in 1915 with the gardens planted. The groundbreaking of the house began in 1919. The house was completed in 1923. It was eventually sold to the Methodists in 1948. And so for the last 75 plus years, we've been a spiritual home for the Methodists. But over the years, it's expanded to become much more an interfaith as well as ecumenical retreat center where we bring in guests, where we have our own programming, and we continue to provide a spiritual home for this next generation of people who are seeking and searching.
Yeah, because that's what I was wondering. So you're really dealing with many denominations, the Methodist, Baptist, Congregational, providing services in a retreat space for them as well. What about, do you also deal with faith-based as well as non-faith-based organizations that look for a time to get away for retreats and kind of rest, renewal, and some re-strategy and how they do things?
Yeah, so Rolling Ridge is open to a number of different denominational entities. They hired me back in 2017 to be able to expand the ecumenical reach, to be able to bring in a larger crowd of Christian denominations and those who are friendly to the Christian tradition. But with that, we've also been able to expand to more of an interfaith perspective, and our facilities are available as many nonprofit groups. And so we've got a number of different colleges and schools that come through, as well as other nonprofit organizations that are based in the Boston and the greater Boston area.
Wow, okay. What are some of the services that, you're offering, for these different retreats or for faith-based, non-faith-based, and how many days, programs you have set up?
Yeah. So we basically have two different streams. We have what we call our guest groups that come in. They're outside organizations that come to rent the facilities. For example, we just had Boston University School of Theology that came.
Oh, good.
They had their annual they had their annual retreat with us over the President's Day weekend. We had Boston College do a freshman retreat with us. We're having Merrimack College come and do a women's retreat with us. And so we've got a number of schools that come on in, and they come oftentimes for a weekend. We've got another organization, a nonprofit group that works with incarcerated individuals. They're in the house right now. They're there for just a few nights doing some training for their staff. We work with a number of different nonprofits down in the Boston area that might come for the weekend. They might come for a few weekdays. We had St. John's Prep come to do a parents orientation for us for a one-day kind of a thing. And so we have a number of different guest groups that come in, along with church groups and denominational entities. But along with that, we also do our own programming, where we provide space for our people who are part of our community to come for a one-day event. As we get ready for Lent, as you were talking about, we've got what we call a Lenten companion retreat, where people can come for a 1 or 2 nights to meet with the spiritual director, along with engaging with some of our programming that we do. And because of the pandemic, we also have expanded to online programming. So we've got in-person, we've got online, we've got one day, we've got overnight events, we've got a plethora of things of our own Rolling Ridge programming, which really focuses on helping people experience what we call a contemplative spirituality. Rolling Ridge is a beautiful space along the lake, on Lake Cochicoit, and it just naturally allows for people to be able to kind of unplug from the busyness of life, to be able to listen in, to sit by the lake, to sit by the fireplace in the house, and simply spend time listening in for God, listening in for the divine, allowing themselves to make that deeper connection within.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you mentioned about the pandemic and the online. Did you see a major increase during that time for the pandemic when you went to the online? How did that program really jump off pretty good?
Well, as you probably know from the pandemic, we all kind of went, what the heck are we going to do?
That's right.
And so we had all of our spring programming that was all scheduled. We canceled all of it, and I talked with our program director and said, what can we do? Can we do anything online? And within a week, we were able to kind of launch our first online retreat, and that continued as we kind of moved through the pandemic. But as we began to meet people online, some who were local, some who had been already involved with our in-person programming, we also found that there were people from all over the country that were looking for places for spiritual respite. You know, right now being on the other side of the pandemic, we often forget how much of a turmoil that people were going through internally, emotionally, and also spiritually.
Yeah.
And as we realized that people were looking for something, but they weren't looking just for something, they were looking for a community. And so we were able to kind of talk about what programming at Rolling Ridge was going to be about. And we realized that for a lot of retreat centers that offer an event or they offer a retreat, they offer what we call a product. And we realized that people were not looking so much for a product, they were looking for a quote-unquote process. They were looking for people to be able to journey with. And that kind of allowed us to be able to develop what we call our soul care ministry, where on a monthly basis we provide online opportunities for people to live into more of those contemplative spaces with other people who are seeking as well. And so with the pandemic, we launched our soul care groups. We have other book studies that we do as well. We do a lot of work with the writings of a Franciscan author named Richard Rohr. And so Rich Rohr has allowed us to be able to live into some more small group spaces on contemplative spirituality, along with books that he's written as well. And so that's kind of, so our online ministry has kind of expanded and grown as our in-person ministry has now kind of kicked back up as we kind of are on this side of the pandemic.
Could you talk a little bit more about the soul care? That sounds very interesting. Are you some of the things you're doing with the soul care?
Yeah, and so as I mentioned, I'm American Baptist by tradition, but I've learned a lot about Methodist spirituality and the Methodist tradition. And so the Methodist tradition grows out of the vision of a person named John Wesley.
Yes.
And John Wesley would oftentimes start some of what he called his class sessions by asking the question, how is it with your soul? How is it with your soul? And today we kind of, that it's not a question that we ask. Oftentimes we ask, how you doing? Kind of
That's
thing,
right. That's right.
And but to ask that question about how is it with your soul, it kind of forces us to kind of take off those layers in which we live, all those masks that we have, to be able to kind of look into those deeper spaces and to kind of say, how am I doing within? And so our soul care groups kind of allow people to kind of come together on those deeper spaces to kind of allow those masks to be able to kind of to let go of those masks and to be able to kind of question, how am I doing within? We oftentimes have some kind of prompt, whether it's a visual prompt or some kind of quote, and we kind of lead the group in a contemplative reflection to be able to kind of bring it from the surface of our lives into those deeper spaces. I oftentimes imagine it like a funnel. If you can imagine, we got the external parts of the funnel, and so we live on those external places of our lives, but we oftentimes need to kind of jump down and kind of allow the funnel to take us down to that center spot. And that's what our soul really reflects. It's that place where we move from the externals of our lives to fall into those internal spaces where we commune and meet our Creator, where we commune and live into that love of God. And oftentimes we kind of get so stuck in our head, we might get so overwhelmed with our emotions that we don't allow ourselves to kind of make that fall, or we need a community to hold that space so that we can do it in a safe space, knowing that we're not doing it alone.
Now, with the soul care, I mean, what do you do with pastors with self-clergy care and that kind of do you have a little component with that as well?
Yeah, so on the third Thursdays we have soul care for clergy, because we know that clergy need to be able to have a place where they can simply just kind of take off all of that stuff that they carry. And we know that, and often through the pandemic we know that clergy probably took the worst hit of it. They were trying to figure out all the stuff that was going on for their congregations and trying to take care of themselves as well. And so our soul care with clergy was one of the first groups that we launched, because we know that clergy well-being and clergy health is so needed in this time. And so Soul Care with Clergy becomes a place for clergy to be able to come together and to kind of move beyond all the competitive stuff that comes with clergy cohorts. Sometimes you get together with clergy and they say, how was your Sunday? Oh yeah, my Sunday was great, and you sometimes often have to put all those guises up to kind of show that you've got it together. It's so hard for clergy to kind of drop those masks. So Soul Care with Clergy really creates that space for clergy to be themselves, to be that beloved self, or to be reminded the fact that they are beloved, to be able to live in that space where they can listen in once again for that still small voice that has called them to that holy and sacred work of pastoral ministry, or however that might look, whether it's clergy within a local congregation or chaplaincy, or even all the other spaces where they're providing pastoral care for the many spaces of spiritual congregations these days.
Yeah, because I noticed a lot of pastors burn out, PSTD, all of those things start arising more during that pandemic time. So that gives a good space for them to be safe, sacred, and just connect with themselves. Say, oh, geez, it was a rough week.
It was a rough week, exactly. And so, as I mentioned, we do our Lenten retreat at the beginning. We do it the week after Ash Wednesday, and it's taking place on March 12th this year. And it's a day retreat that with overnight opportunities for people. But we find that for a lot of clergy, as they're getting ready for all the Lenten and Easter celebrations, they needed time to be able to get away. And so along with our Lenten retreat that we do, we also do an Advent retreat as well. And oftentimes we get clergy who are part of that because they need time for themselves to be able to get away and to be cared for. And so oftentimes our Advent retreats and our clergy and our Lenten retreats become a place for the clergy to be able to get away, spend time in silence, to be able to spend time with some of the prayer stations that we have, to simply to sit and listen and to be renewed and recharged in preparation for the busyness of the Lenten season that they're leading, whether it's Good Friday services or Easter services or their
Holy
own
Week.
Lenten, Holy Week, and all the Lenten preparations that they might have.
Now, do you have like a labyrinth and some of those things that they can use and people can guide them through that? Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Rolling Ridge has 2 outdoor labyrinths, and so Right now they're covered with snow.
Yeah.
But the stones are sticking up a little bit. But we have 2 outdoor labyrinths that usually by that time we'll see where we are when March 12th comes. But we do have 2 outdoor labyrinths that are available, and then we also have an indoor labyrinth that we make available during that time as well. And we use the labyrinth as part of a contemplative reflection as part of our Lenten retreat as well.
Yeah, and do you have like a guided person to work with the clergy, pastors, preachers that come in during that Lenten season to give them some new, fresh ideas and things of that nature? Or?
Yeah, so for our Lenten retreat on March 12th, I kind of provide the shape for that, and I'm the one that kind of guides and facilitates that, and so I'm the one that's kind of the point person for that retreat. But as we go through the rest of Lent, we have a number of different other retreats as well, and we have different retreat facilitators that are available. So if March 12th doesn't work, on March 19th we've got some other things that are going on. We've got one on March 12th that's called Inviting Wholeness into Focus, where it's about bio-spiritual feedback, bio-spiritual focusing, where it's recognizing that oftentimes we get so caught up in our spirit and our emotions, we forget about the fact that our body is how we are being incarnated. And so we've got that kind of a retreat coming up. We've got a sound healing retreat that's coming up on March 26th. We'll have one that's called The Gift of Story on April 2nd. We have one on the Ukrainian art, Ukrainian Easter eggs, where it's faith and art on April 10th. And then we're doing one on Tai Chi on April 16th. Tai Chi and the Paschal Mystery during Holy Week. So that before the busyness of Holy Week comes up, the person who facilitates that with us shows how the movements of Tai Chi really lean into the movements of Holy Week, of death and resurrection, and how the movements of Tai Chi can embody that as we live into that space.
Wow, okay. That's nice. So that's a good little exercise and all of that going on with the Tai Chi body movement.
Body movement, and a lot of the retreat programming that we do really focuses on what we call embodied spiritual practices, recognizing that sometimes we need to get out of our heads, get out of our hearts, and to live into our bodies so that God can speak to us more fully as holistic beings.
Oh, great. Now, anything else you'd like to share about the Rolling Ridge Retreat Center?
And so Rolling Ridge has a number of different programs, especially during the Lenten season. We've got all of our Lenten retreats. And so we've got our Lenten programming that we've got here called Journey with Us Through Lent. And so we've got our in-person programs, but we also have what we call our online Lenten prayer journey. So during the Vesper hours on Sunday evening at 6:00, we do a Lenten prayer journey online where we have a spiritual reading, where we allow people to live into a place of silence and reflection around the reading. This year we're using John Pavlovich's book called Rise to be able to kind of help frame our time together with contemplative reflection and sharing. And so that's every Sunday during the Lenten season.
And so it's like from 6 to 7? Or?
6 to 7, yeah. And we use some Taizé music. Taizé is kind of more of a meditative chant music. And we kind of use that to help guide our time, to enter us into that space, following some times of silence. We then do the reading, and then we open it up for some time of sharing.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's nice. So now do you get a cross-section of many people from just the local area, or you get people from mostly in New England that comes during the Lenten time?
And so for our in-person retreats, it's usually from the area, but online we've got people from all the various time zones that we do. And for our soul care groups, we actually have people from all the various time zones as well. On the 4th Tuesday of the month, we do one that's called Soul Care with Artists, and we have some regular people that join us from Washington State, from California, and so we meet at 10:00 in the morning, East Coast. We know that it's very early for them. It's 7:00 in the morning on the West Coast, but they join us because they realize the value of being with other artists who are leaning into that soul care space as we use faith and spirituality as the guide for that time. And so our online program has a cross section of people, and it's interesting that last year we did a Pentecost retreat. And it was a Pentecost retreat on the Labyrinth, and so we had an opportunity to walk the Labyrinth during that Pentecost weekend. And someone who was involved with our Richard Rohr sharing group from Ohio, said she goes, I want to come to Rolling Ridge. And so she loaded up the car with her and her friends, and the four of them drove out from Ohio for a weekend retreat for Pentecost at Rolling Ridge on the Labyrinth. And that was just one of those. You drove all the way out from Ohio to Massachusetts for a retreat, but because she recognizes the nature, the contemplative nature of Rolling Ridge, the beauty of our community that we formed online, she wanted to meet in person some of the people that she had been engaging with online.
Wow,
and
that's
so
beautiful.
It's a strange growth problem that we're having about how we work with an online community as well as an in-person community. But we've been blessed, and we're living into what does it mean for us to be a retreat center in this new day and age. During the pandemic, some of our local retreat centers closed, unfortunately.
Okay.
And but we at Rolling Ridge were able to kind of find a way to be able to plot a new path and a new future.
Sure.
And that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, and so during your Lenten series, I mean, how many people do you normally can you house? I mean, do some people stay over, or is it just a 1 day, 2 day? How does that work? You know, because I mean, it's a big lot of space.
Yeah.
You know, greenery and all of that.
Yeah. So we've got 38 acres on our property, and we got a historic mansion, as I mentioned. And altogether, we've got 60 beds, 28 bedrooms, and 18 bathrooms. You can do the math.
Okay.
It's not everyone gets their own bathroom because it's a manor house with shared community bathrooms, but some bedrooms that do have their own bathrooms. So we are able to accommodate a number of different people. And so for our Lenten retreat, the focus is on the 1 day on that Wednesday, but people can select overnight options as well. And with the overnight option, they can meet with a spiritual director. We have what is called the Listening Collective at Rolling Ridge that helps match people who are wanting to work with the spiritual director, and we match them with someone who is part of our Listening Collective community, who is a trained spiritual director, who's been vetted, and we kind of match them up so that they are able to have a spiritual companion who can ask those questions about where is God at work in their lives and be able to hold that space. And so we provide spiritual direction opportunities through our Lenten retreat, but also throughout the year, people meet one-on-one with the spiritual director at Rolling Ridge. They meet with them online. They meet them all across the region. But Listening Collective is our network of spiritual directors and people who are looking to meet with a spiritual companion.
Wow, that's nice. Yeah, so that, I mean, because sometimes you might need an extra day or two after you're going through the retreat the 1 day, and just kind of really have some one-on-one engagement to see how is that really speaking to my heart and my soul.
And along with our spiritual direction, we also have wellness as well. So oftentimes people will come for what we call a personal retreat, and they'll meet with the spiritual director, and they'll get a massage. Not a bad way to care for your mind and your spirit and your body, with some time away. So and then we also have during the month of May, on the last week of May, we have Artist Week, and so it becomes a space for artists to kind of come away for 3, 4, 5 nights if they want to be able to. We convert our meeting space into a art studio, and people can paint. They can do whatever they want to do, along with some day workshops as well.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up this episode today?
Well, I've probably been talking longer than I'm supposed to, but
No, this has been good information, and I'm hoping people really take advantage of it. If they're not aware of Rolling Ridge, I hope they find out, hey, this is a good place to be.
Yeah, many people don't know that Rolling Ridge exists. We call ourselves the hidden gem on the shores of Lake Kachikowit. We're right off of Great Pond Road on North Andover, and we're the main house is a third of a mile in, so you can't see Rolling Ridge off of the main road. But when you drive down the dirt road, you're able to enter into a space that is full of beauty, a place of silence, a place of reflection, and many people feel that they're able to commune with God more intimately there. We've got we have an outdoor chapel right along the lake. We call it the Point of Pines Chapel. It's got a beautiful cross that overlooks the water. And since 1948, when we've been doing retreat work, it has been it has been a safe and sacred space. Some people call it a thin space, a place where they're able to feel the presence of God much more intimately.
Okay. So how do they get in contact with you to, come to these retreats and get to Rolling Ridge?
And so www.rollingridge.org. Rollingridge.org is our website. We just launched a new website. We redid it, making it a little bit more easy for people to find their program that they're looking for. We've got a search function, so if they go to programs, they can type in something like you can type in Tai Chi, and our Tai Chi retreat will come up. Type in Lent, Lent will come up. Type in Artist Week will come up. And type in Soul Care, there's all sorts of different soul care opportunities that we have online.
All right. So anything else you'd like to share before we wrap it up?
No. So between our programs and our rental facilities, we provide a spiritual home for the greater New England, Boston area.
Great. Well, I want to say thank you, Reverend Dr. Lawrence J., for being here today with us, and just for your commitment and dedication at Rolling Ridge to provide a spiritual transformational space for people and clergy who want to connect with God and themselves. Thank you to our listening audience for tuning in to the Growth Matters podcast. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share with the greater community. Yes, until next time, stay focused. Prepare, execute, and celebrate the victories in your life, and continue to grow and develop in all areas of your life. I am your host, Justice, signing off. The Growth Matters podcast happens at MMTV 360 Main Street, Melrose, Massachusetts. Thank you.